Here's another example of how the time change can actually cause a riot. What happens when you put young adults and copious amounts of alcohol together? You can have problems. It especially comes through in the fall when time bounces ahead. Remember, spring back, spring forward. So at 1 o'clock, it automatically becomes 2 o'clock, 2 a.m., and the bars close. So they lose an hour of drinking time when daylight savings does the switch. Ohio State University had over 1,000 students one night, and late partiers chant freedom as they threw liquor bottles at the police attempting to control the riot. And all that was about the bars closing at what they thought was 1 o'clock, and in reality it was 2 o'clock. As you can tell, even in a manslaughter or just a traffic accident, but as you see, this case listed a manslaughter that occurred in California, and everything was hinged upon, was the roadway slick or not at the time of the accident? And it all came down to daylight savings time change. Does somebody adjust for it or not? Turns out in this case, they had not adjusted for it, and the road was slick at the time of the accident, like the driver said it was. So what could you expect for future questions that might be asked by a defense attorney or the other side in a plaintiff lawsuit? Example in a hacking case or a case where a computer was hacked, when was an OS patch really done? Was it done in a timely manner or not? What date and time? Was it done before or after daylight saving switch? Was a clock manually moved ahead or behind to hide something in a case? There are artifacts that can show that. What was shown in the event logs that shows that? Or you see an email that is sent and a timestamp on it at the date and time that the person said they sent it. It would be within the daylight savings time, yet it shows standard time on the header. What do applications do? What is a base timestamp that an application will use? Does it use something off the internet? Does it use something, the BIOS clock on the computer itself? A good example of that would be antivirus. When was it run? Was that run based on the timestamp, the daylight savings, make it mess up and not be run on a certain day because all of a sudden time jumped ahead and it skipped a task that it had to do at that period of time? That's how important time can be in these investigations, and why it comes back to you as the analyst to be able to determine when and where and what time period, what timestamp, what zone was used. I know your head's exploding at this point. You're saying to yourself, why did I take this class on time? Like I said, it's very important. But why don't we take a break for a few minutes and then return back after you've cleared off your head, relaxed a few minutes, and we'll go on with sources of time and the remainder of this class. Before we start talking about dates and times and files and things like that, I'm going to speak really briefly about sources of time, what's good and what's bad. Cell phone, tower, internet, atomic, watches, looking up at the sun with a sundial. And actually, sometimes the sundial can be pretty accurate. The best source of time is absolutely the atomic clock. It's the standard by which the entire world goes by. Internet time server is an example of that. WWV or WWVB, the radio time. You can find them by tuning a radio or ham radio to either 5, 10, 15, or 20, or 60 megahertz on the radial dial. And you will hear the time clock going, and it will always have a beep on the hour. The official US time from the web is located at nist.time.gov. A lot of people set up their systems to get the official time right from that website. Some other sources of time. Okay, this is going to age some people. What is popcorn? That's the phone number, 767-1212, and it's good in almost every area code inside the United States. If you dial popcorn, you'll see it'll tell you the time. However, a lot of testing's been done on it, and it's not always accurate, especially around daylight savings. A cell phone. gets it right from the local cell site that you first get into when you get on the system. That may not be accurate also, because a lot of cell sites are run by independent people, and sometimes they don't log very good clocks inside their cell sites, or they're not getting it from the NIST cell time base. So cell phones you always have to be a little checking on. Radio news start every hour. No, they never start on the hour. They could be 5 minutes late. You never know, because they know you don't have a clock in the car. You're just driving down the road listening to the radio. Observe sunrise, noon, and sunset. No, that's not too accurate. It generally is accurate because you can say, hey, okay, it's sunset. That usually happens around 6 o'clock. But you'd have to have a timing map that shows your location, latitude and longitude, and where the sun rises and sun sets according to that exact position. You move 2,000 feet away, what happens? It'll be off by half a second or so as to when it's going to pop up. One of the things you can do as a forensic examiner is buy an atomic clock and check it against the NIST time.gov website prior to going out. I have had quite a few of these in my career, and I can tell you that 1 out of probably 10 was not accurate. And I found that out by literally when I bought it, I compared it to the NIST time.gov site and saw that it was off by a couple seconds. But generally, they are pretty right on. Now, we learned all that to help us understand when it comes to file systems, dates, and times. So for the purposes of this class, we're going to be talking about the Microsoft family of operating systems. There are very many other operating systems out there, such as Linux, Android, iOS, X, just to name a few. You need to find out about those operating systems, how they handle dates and times. And remember that it applies when an application or system program is operating using the file system standard calls. And there was just no funny business going on. You do realize that an application does not have to use the standard calls to update the date and times in an NTSF or a DOS operating system. They can do what they call custom changes, and they directly write to the files without bypassing the MFT or the DOS operating system. Of course, in the long run, all this relies upon the system clock accuracy or the accuracy of the internet clock they used over the network. One thing you have to keep in mind is that a system clock does lose or gain time over a certain time period. And the file dates and times rely completely on the system clock. Sometimes and dates inside a file are independent of the system clock. We'll talk about more about that later, but that's called metadata. You'll see that in programs such as Excel, Word, PowerPoint. So remember, not everything you're going to see now applies. It can change based on the application that you're using. Don't worry about it. It's going to be painless. So let's jump into it. So we can find date and times in directories and folders, in log files, because that's what a log file basically is date and times of events. We can find it within document files. You can find those things even in a picture file, a PSG, or a GIF image. You can find them in memory swap files and databases, and emails, and the headers of emails, and the hidden headers of emails, and on the server email system. You can find date and times in firmware. You can find it in the MFT of an NTFS system. In fact, in the MFT system, there are 9 dates and times besides the general 4 that we're used to, but they can have up to 9.